Hey, welcome back to JG3 Reviews, and we're doing another fountain pen this afternoon. I mentioned a few days ago that I wanted to share with you a couple of vintage pens, and the first one I've done already. That's the Sheaffer White Dot Fashion 2, and this one is an even harder to find vintage pen. I guess vintage, it might just be used, and I say that because I have only had this for, several years, but already they're discontinued, I think, and hard to find. So this is a Jinhao 800, and if you Google Jinhao 800 now, what you'll find is not this pen at all. You'll find a whole other pen, and this one will be really hard to come by. I actually bought it from jetpens.com, one of my favorite online stores, all those years ago, and they no longer even sell Jinhaos at all. But this pen, really difficult to find. Used, it seems to be impossible. I've never found one on eBay. But there's some neat things about this pen, and it was one of my first, I think it might have been the first Jinhao that I ever had. So let's go ahead and dive right into the look at the design. I think that's the most interesting part of this pen and how well it writes. Let's flip the camera and get started. All right, now let's take a look at this Jinhao 800. You can see the name clearly here on the cap, on this band on the cap, and Jinhao. The design and the make of this pen, it's interesting. It seems very different from most Jinhaos now, and I'm assuming this is probably a design that I just got in on the tail end of their production, and probably was around for a while, but is not one that they offer now. I find this pen interesting. Like I say, it was the very first one that I got. I got it because of this blue, which, as you can see, the blue lacquer on this pen is really nice. It has a beautiful depth to it that hopefully the camera is able to pick up on. Maybe there you can see. Really well done, especially for a pen that was in this price range. I don't know, it was several dollars, less, maybe $5, I don't remember. I bought it on JetPens back before they stopped selling Jinhaos. So I really am not even sure, although probably, maybe they would still have a several-year-old thing in my order that I could find out. And if I do, I'll put it up here. If it doesn't appear up here, then I couldn't find it. But interesting design, and when I first got it, I didn't like a fine or extra fine nib as much as I do now, but the pen actually writes quite well. It does have a converter, which I like. I'll show you that here in a second. But before that, let's look at the design, because something jumped out at me when I was looking over this pen several weeks ago, thinking about putting it in the lineup for videos to bring to you. And something struck me that had never struck me as I used it before. One, I always thought it was kind of interesting, these rings that you can rotate. I don't know if that's supposed to do that or not, but you could do it around the cap here. I noticed those, and those reminded me of something very familiar. And it also has, I'll have to take the cap off because of the room I have or don't have here. When you look at the top of the cap, it has this red plastic, of course, but a red plastic jewel with a black surround and a chrome top around that too, band or ring around that, and a silver clip. And all of these things, I was looking at them, and suddenly something hit me. And the design of the rest of the pen, I got a little bit of ink on there. That's okay. I might as well put it on my thumb. All the other ink is going there tonight anyway, right? Oh, wow. So, don't try that at home. I looked at this, which has an almost 1950s, like a late 50s, beginning of the space age sort of design. Do you see what I'm saying about that? It just reminds me of products from 58, 59, 60 in America, American products. There were a lot of things that echoed space themes. And you look at that, and you look at the rest of this pen, and it starts to be more cohesive a design than I first thought. And then something hit me. What is familiar about the wreaths on these rings as you go around the pen? What is the deal with that? And why is this so familiar? And that's it. Now, I'm a bit of a 50s car fan, and maybe you are too. And my daughter has her first car, which we bought from a good friend at church, and is an older car with some of the exact same length, not 50s, just 2000, early 2000s, but it still has some of these old bits of design language, and that's when it hit me what I was seeing. Look how similar this is to a GM or even a Ford or Chrysler, but a GM tail light from the 50s. And you know, that clip from the right angle almost looks like a formal roof line from the time. And then you see the wreath around the band here, and that's exactly the same. It is identical when you look at it the right way. I should have done this in the daytime when I could have taken you out to the car and shown you the hood ornament with the old Cadillac wreath hood ornament. Somebody, I think, might have liked cars when I was about 10. If I were in school looking at this pen, it would have been transformed in my mind to an old car. And I think maybe that's what the guy had in mind, or the lady had in mind, whoever it was, team had in mind, that designed this pen. All those little things just kind of echo some old car designs in kind of a cool way. And for me, suddenly I like this pen a whole lot more. So that's interesting to me about the design. Now let me show you how the pen writes, if I have more ink in the pen than I have on my hands. Okay, let's take a look at this one. It is a Jinhao 800, and it has an extra fine nib. My paper's bouncing there. That's the problem. That's not really the pen. Very much an extra fine. And this has, familiar to this channel, Noodler's Midnight Black. No, I always say Midnight Black. Midnight Blue. That paper is bouncing so much there, curled up. I can barely write with it today. Some of you have asked what paper this is. This is an art supply marker pad. It's paper that I really like. It's nice and smooth. It's fairly thick, and I like it. It's humid today, and it's curled a little bit. It doesn't usually do that too badly, but I'm getting to the end of the pad, and I think I've just kind of warped it in flipping it over so much. I'm going to take that cap off, but that's what that is. The pen is long enough you can write with it uncapped, and it will stay on securely. I think it's better balanced without it. It's not a heavy pen, even though it is a lacquered metal barrel and cap. It is a plastic section, and like I say, a very cool Jetsons-like space age sort of design with some similar to car themes going on there. Kind of an interesting pen. It's a shame that you can't find them very much anymore. I'd try. I know they had a red that was also a really good looking pen, and I tried to find it, but I've just not been able to find one. I'm going to be quiet and let you hear how this writes. I think it's fairly typical of an extra fine Jinhao. Not too wet, but not too dry either. And let's see here, just do a few things, give you an idea. I like to give you a variety of samples just to see what that's like. I find it writes just fine. And it's probably thinner than I normally like. I don't like a really, really thin, extra fine. Most of the time, my experience, they're too scratchy. This one's not scratchy. It's just, I like a little bit thicker line when I write than that. But that's okay. I do like the pen overall. It's fine enough. I got more letters in than I normally do. It just is... To me, here's my impression of this pen. I can see why, probably, that Jinhao moved on to other designs. I think it's actually let down by this label, which is just painted on when they've gone to more trouble and especially this blue lacquer. I tell you what, if they had put out the same pen where the top of the cap just looks just like this, very simple, just minimal stuff here, I think they would have a really good looking minimalist pen. If they wanted to bring that back, I think they might have a winner. I would like it with the fine that is in the Jinhao 51A. Of course, it would be great with a medium, I think. That's just what I like. That's just personal preference. This one is almost too extra fine for me, and that's why the next pen I bought after this from them, actually, I think it was a Jinhao. No, I take that back. It was a Jinhao. The X450 was the next pen, which has the same really nice blue lacquer, but a big number 6 nib, and really like that one. But if you can find one, would I say, yeah, go for that. It's got to be a reasonable price. They were never expensive to begin with. It's not really a collectible pen. If you found one and you were curious and it was a few bucks, I'd go ahead and grab it and check it out and see, because it is kind of a fun pen. Once I noticed all the little car-like themes in this, and maybe that's just me. Maybe that's like looking at a cloud and you see a giraffe and I see an elephant. But I liked it, and I like the design, and it's a fun pen. I like the kind of the space-age design of the grip section. It's thinner than I like, but it's okay. Not a bad pen at all. So if you can find one, or if you come across one, you might want to snatch that up. Well, God bless you, and have a good week, and good hunting if you're one of those people out there that's mentioned in the comments that you're looking for some vintage pens, because I'm newer to vintage pens. I just have some that are now old enough to be vintage, and I have an Esterbrook, which was kind of my first purposeful vintage purchase that I'm really happy with and that I will review soon as well. But God bless you, and have a good week.